Summer 1940. France had surrendered, and American generals realized that their army was a decade behind. There were almost no tanks, and the existing ones, the light M2 and M3 Stuart, looked ridiculous compared to the German Panzer III and IV. The Americans realized that they urgently needed a medium tank that could support the infantry, fight light tanks, and be simple enough to be produced in the thousands. In 1941, the American command ordered a new tank. The requirements were simple: use everything that had already been tested on the M3, but put a gun in the turret, improve the armor and visibility, and make everything as simple as possible to manufacture. This is how the M4 Sherman came to be. It was made in a hurry, but with the engineering genius of American industry. A welded hull, sometimes cast depending on the factory, a Continental R 975 gasoline engine, a 75mm gun, and a crew of 5. It turned out to be light, 30 tons, reliable, and, importantly, it could be built anywhere. Why soldiers hated Sherman? The M4 Sherman tank was the most widely used Allied tank in World War II. But those who sat inside it did not call it by its proud name. Instead, they referred to it with grim irony as Ronson, lighter. Because when it was hit, the Sherman burst into flames like a gasoline lamp. 1. It burned from any hit. The first Sherman models had a gasoline engine, and the fuel tanks were located next to the crew. A hit to the hull often turned the tank into a fiery coffin. The flames spread throughout the compartment, and there was almost no chance of survival. Later, the US switched to diesel versions and added wet ammunition storage. Shells were placed in liquid to prevent them from igniting. But by that time, the reputation had already been destroyed. Armor that is too thin is a real disaster on the front lines. When the M4 Sherman was created in 1941, it looked quite decent. Its armor, up to 75mm thick at the front and 40 to 50mm thick at the sides, was considered normal. Against the early German PZ-3 and PZ-4 tanks, this was sufficient. But the war changed quickly. By 1943, Tigers and Panthers had appeared on the battlefield, real monsters with frontal armor up to 120mm thick and powerful 88mm guns that could penetrate the Sherman from a kilometer away. The Sherman, with its 75mm gun, could barely penetrate the Panther's side armor from a distance of 100 to 200 meters, and only if it was lucky. And such distances in real combat were suicidal. The Americans joked with dark humor. To destroy one Tiger, you have to sacrifice 5 Shermans. One will spot it, the second will distract it, the third will try to penetrate it, and the fourth and fifth will replace the first 3. Many people asked why they didn't just reinforce the armor. The answer is simple. America relied on quantity rather than invincibility. The Sherman had to be easy to manufacture, simple to repair, and convenient to transport across the ocean. Germany could produce dozens of Tigers and Panthers, but thousands of Shermans. In total, the Americans assembled nearly 50,000 vehicles, so even if some were destroyed, new ones were always available to replace them. 3. Weak weaponry against the Germans. The standard Sherman gun was 75mm. It was good for supporting infantry, but almost useless against Tigers and Panthers. The Americans were late in introducing the 76mm and 17-pounder, the British version of the Firefly. But this was a reactive decision rather than the original concept. 4. It was too tall and noisy. The Sherman was almost a meter taller than the Soviet T-34. It stood out on the battlefield like a beacon. Add to that a loud engine, and the enemy could hear it long before it fired. 5. Tankers had no chance of survival. When the Sherman burned, everything inside turned into a furnace. Witnesses recalled how the crews did not even have time to open the hatch. American infantrymen were afraid to approach damaged Shermans. Everything inside was melting. But why was it still made? The Sherman was cheap, simple, and easy to repair. It was not designed to be a monster, but rather a mass-produced workhorse that would overwhelm the enemy with numbers. It was precisely its mass production and reliability that saved the United States. But those who fought in it paid for it with their blood. Ultimately, the Sherman became a symbol of American military philosophy. Quantity has a quality all its own. How Sherman influenced Europe during World War II. When the M4 Sherman first appeared on the battlefields of Europe, in North Africa in the summer of 1942, and then in France, it became a symbol of the return of American power. Its mass appearance literally turned the balance of power upside down. 1. It gave the Allies speed and numerical superiority. The European theatre of war required not perfect tanks, but mobile and repairable ones. The Sherman was just that. It could travel faster than most German tanks, up to 40 kilometers per hour, had a huge range, up to 160 kilometers, and could be repaired right in the field. This meant that the Allied armies could advance further and faster than the enemy could retreat. After the Normandy landings in 1944, the Sherman literally flooded the French roads. Thousands of tanks were moving east toward Germany. 2. It became the main instrument of the liberation of Western Europe. French, British, Canadian, and American divisions used the Sherman as their main battle tank in the liberation of Paris, Brussels, and The Hague. Yes, it lost to the Tigers in duels, but thanks to its numbers and coordination, the Sherman became the backbone of all offensives. One German officer later said, "We destroyed dozens of Shermans, but new ones always appeared in their place. And then we realized that we had already lost the war." 3. It forced Germany to waste resources. The Tigers and Panthers were technologically advanced, but monstrously expensive. Each Tiger cost as much as 4 Shermans and required twice as much fuel and maintenance. The Allies literally suffocated Germany with the amount of equipment they had. For every Sherman destroyed, 10 new ones were produced. Germany could not afford such a luxury. 4. It became a symbol of US industrial power. While Europe was burning, American factories were working around the clock. The Sherman became the embodiment of the idea. We don't have to make the best tank. We have to make a tank that will arrive. This philosophy changed the very understanding of war. From then on, it was not engineering geniuses who won, but manufacturing geniuses. The Sherman became the weapon that allowed the US to show Europe that America could not only fight, but also rebuild. 5. After the war, the Sherman became the foundation of NATO. After Germany's surrender, thousands of Shermans remained in Europe. They served in the French army, in the British army, in the Italian, Belgian, and Dutch armies. Some countries used Shermans until the 1960s, and Israel modernized them and even used them in the Six-Day War of 1967. The Sherman became the first common tank of the West, a kind of prototype for NATO's unified military doctrine. 6. It helped Europe get back on its feet. After the war, the US left a huge number of Shermans in Europe, not only as weapons, but also as a sign of alliance. They stood in squares, museums, and memorials as a symbol of liberation. For the French and Belgians, the Sherman became a sign of the return of freedom. Many tanks with the inscription, "From the American People," still stand near the villages where the battles took place, in memory of the fact that mass steel brought peace. Conclusion: the Sherman changed Europe not through its perfection, but through its inevitability. It proved that war is not just a battle of tanks, but a battle of factories, engineers, and logistics. The Sherman was simple, noisy, and vulnerable, but it was the wheels on which Europe drove out of the hell of war.